This is actually a question to you, not to me. Do you think that if Filecoin would to go away tomorrow, including the foundation and the money the foundation has, would IPFS still be around considering what it is?
Yeah, it's a commons network. It literally can't go away at this point. So a lot of people point at it as saying that, like, as a downside. Oh, well, how do you know it's going to stay online? It's like, well, how do you know a website is going to stay online? It's the same. Someone has to do work, possibly pay for resources to keep things online, keep things fast, and everything else like that. I think we're in a really tough spot in this Web 2 ad supported world where a lot of people in the world have been trained that everything on the internet is free. And there's two parts to this. One is, let's use a completely made up example. A JPEG on the internet. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't hurt anyone if you copy those bits. Amazing. Abundance. Creative Commons licensing, a bunch of other things like this that allows for reuse and mixing. It doesn't cost anything. That's amazing. That's a fantastic basis. We should have this abundance mindset around it. Same thing with open source code, right? The bits of code that you have checked into GitHub repos are download it, make a copy. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't subtract from that. But at scale, this does cost a lot. And in fact, the interesting thing is that bandwidth. If you have some services at Amazon and you're using S3, and S3 was the first service that Amazon launched. I launched some Drupal hosting services in the early days in 2005. So this was about 18 months before Amazon launched S3 or any of the AWS services. So we had to run a lot of like bare metal or VPSs and do all that stuff ourselves. And it was a lot harder. But anyway, with Amazon S3, you pay, a relatively small amount for storage. And the cost for bandwidth is 5x that. I actually had someone approach me. They're like, oh, Fission, we're trying to check out IPFS, really interesting things. We're hosting some stuff on Vercel right now, but we got a bandwidth bill for $1,000 last month. I'm like, yeah, can IPFS make that cheaper? I'm like, probably not. It depends on the use case and a bunch of other things like that, right? There's some really interesting deduplication use places for IPFS. But if you need to persistently keep something online, whether it's IPFS or a commercial hosting service like Vercel, you're still going to have to pay for bandwidth in some ways, and if you want it to be fast, you may need to do some caching, and that's either running stuff yourself or paying someone to run it. And this comes down to, I'll do the open source thing again, right? So the code is free. If you file an issue, there's only so many maintainers with only so much time. Being in the community, writing documentation, troubleshooting things, maintaining it, right? If you build something in JavaScript, approximately a week later, if you have any sort of normal dependencies, you'll need to update 5 different dependencies. And that's work that has to be done by someone. And so I think that's something to keep in mind generally, that protocols like IPFS are not going to go away. And they give us the capabilities to work on a commons network together. But people shouldn't be surprised if they start needing to think about how they help themselves, their users, their partners, their friends, their countries, their regions do stuff. That's the part that we need to start making 100% the part of Web3, not the lip service part, but saying a responsibility to work together with others to maintain the things that are important.